Okay, this is a little tutorial on working on the grid that is for the line inventory project and specifically for your line inventory. And I'm going to do this with 1/8" borders between the grid. However, I'm not going to incorporate a border around the edge of the paper. It takes too long and you might find that it'll drive you crazy if you try to do it. One of the things I wanted to do this for was because we ran out of time in class, but the other thing is because it's very important to use the manufactured edges that you've got with your tools. So that would be this edge of the ruler as well as the edge of your cropped or rather trimmed Bristol board. Same thing with your sketchbook. So as long as you're using these two edges, you're probably always going to have a straight line. This is which is something that's important when it comes to drawing a grid. So I'm just using a regular number 2 mechanical pencil for this, but a really light drawing pencil like those hard 2H, 4H pencils that come in the kit would be just as good, or probably better, so you wouldn't see the grid. In this case, I'll try to use this pencil so that you can see the grid on the in the camera. So what I'm going to do is I will start with aligning my ruler against the edge of the paper, so you can see how I'm doing that here, and I want them to be perfectly aligned. The other thing I'm going to do is give myself a little bit of space along the top of my ruler because I want to be able to write increments along the top of the paper. So what I've done is I'm making a visual guesstimation as to approximate distance from the ruler to the edge of the paper. I want it to be consistent all the way across. So then from here I'm just going to make little marks, okay, at every inch and a half increment, and then I'm going to make another little mark at the 1/8 of an inch spacing in between. So for this purpose I'm going to go ahead and slide my ruler over a little bit so I can make the next measurement. And if you're really good at consistency and focus, you don't have to you can probably do this without moving your ruler across your paper, but getting this prepared for you guys, I made mistakes, so I would imagine that everybody else will make mistakes. So I just continually do that, and I'll continually shift my ruler over to where so that it makes sense for my every 1.5 inch measurement. Okay, so eventually I'll get to the end, and then so I've done the top of my paper, for me, the top of my paper, and I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to do the other side. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that one side of your paper will have will be sort of excess because you just won't have enough paper length to include another measurement of the 1.5 inches. So make sure that that set of markings that you're making mimic the ones that you just made. So I have extra space over here, so I need to make sure that my first increment lines up with my paper just as it does here. So then and in this case, I'm going to start backwards because that way I'll keep it consistent. So I'll make marks. Okay, so by this point you should have all of your grid for the top and the bottom, and you do the same thing for side to side. So I have little tick marks all the way around my grid. So then from this point it's about connecting the dots. So again, the major component here is using your manufactured edges. So I'm going to line up, and this is where standing or putting yourself in a situation where you can see over your ruler is really important, because you want to make sure that the paper lines up to the edge of your ruler and that it matches, and that your points that you've already drawn also align to your ruler. And then when it comes to drawing the line, seems simple, but if you have a cork-backed ruler, you have a little bit of a lip, and you don't want your pencil lead to go under the lip. So you just want to drag it along at the same speed all the way across, and you get a nice little light line. And I'll do another one that's a little darker so you can see it. Okay, and again, you don't have to do it this dark. Let me do it again. do one more line. So if you do this with a hard pencil and you do it lightly, your grid will just disappear when you start working on your inventory itself. So I'm going to do the same thing, and this side has the excess, so you'll sort of see where that exists. And I'm also left-handed, so everything, if you're right-handed, it'll be reversed. I think the longest part of this, the things that take the longest are your measuring. If you do it correctly, you won't have to fix it. So you can start to see how your grid is formed. And then from here, you would take obviously your different materials, and you could start working inside of your grid, doing whatever it is that you're going to do. Okay, so like if and essentially you'll sort of finish out the grid, and you'll have as many as you get. So in this case, I have enough for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 across, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. So what is that? 35. So if I have 75 that you need, then you obviously need to make that many more grids. Okay. If you have questions over the course of the weekend, make sure that you text me or email me. Otherwise, have a great weekend.